This week, I played Hotline Miami, a top-down shooter released in 2012. I've had this game recommended to me by quite a few friends who praised its fun and fast-paced gameplay, the cool retro style, and the amazing soundtrack. So, this week, I finally got around to playing it. Without any further ado, let's jump into the pixelated world of Hotline Miami. I've split this review into two parts, with the first half being spoiler-free, and the second half delving a little deeper into some story and gameplay spoilers. Now, I'm far too young to remember when video games actually looked like this, so it was a bit of a breath of fresh air to see some awesome pixel art in this game. It really does give a great impression of what I imagine 1980s Miami might have looked like, and the use of colour and certain retro-style graphical elements really helped with the art direction overall. While at a glance it may look like a fun and colourful game, which it is, if you look a little bit deeper you can see just how much detail the artists have managed to put into the levels and sprites, simultaneously giving the game a gritty and grimy feeling. Overall, the visuals are a treat, although they may not be for everyone, especially younger audiences who don't have that 80s nostalgia. The gameplay is the main attraction, in my opinion, of Hotline Miami. The primary gameplay loop starts with you receiving a mysterious coded phone call telling you to go to an address and deal with whoever is there. That usually involves a lot of brutal murdering, using a combination of stealth and brute force. Generally, the two main approaches you can take are melee weapons, which are very quiet with the trade-off of limited range and not guaranteed one-hit kills, or guns, which are deadly at long range and also very loud, catching the attention of nearby enemies. I generally preferred using guns, although for some levels a mixture of both playstyles was absolutely crucial. There are some other fun gameplay mechanics, such as the ability to smash open a door into an enemy's face, knocking them down. Or emptying a magazine of bullets into a group of enemies, throwing the empty gun at the one still standing, knocking them down, and then finishing them off with your bare hands. The game progressively introduces more enemy types as you progress, such as Goon, Goon with Gun, Doggo, and Big Boy. There are a few more unique enemy types, as well as a few bosses, who each have their own fighting styles and associated challenges. The controls are pretty simple, using just WASD and the mouse. They do feel a bit vague and floaty, however, this somewhat plays into the game's narrative. There's a great little tutorial to introduce you to the controls, which delightfully starts with this gentleman saying, "I'm here to tell you how to kill people." One of the key pieces of Hotline Miami's iconography is the masks, which actually serve a pretty important gameplay function. The masks give the player a different special ability depending on which one they are wearing. For example, one of my favourites is Don Juan, which makes slamming doors into enemies lethal. Or Peter, which I used for a lot of my playthrough, makes gunshots much quieter, thus getting the attention of fewer enemies. The masks are a great way to switch up your playstyle if you feel it's getting a bit too easy, too hard, or if you just feel like a change. The combat gameplay is broken up by narrative sections after pretty much every level, some of which include other gameplay elements such as stealth, which is very refreshing after spending the last half hour smashing Mafia goons' heads against doors. Overall, the gameplay in Hotline Miami is great. It's quite challenging yet balanced, with multiple ways to approach each level, and a pretty good variety of level design and enemy types with overall great pacing. Hotline Miami's plot is not quite at the forefront of the game, however it is really good, albeit rather vague. You start the game with these three masked figures in a strange room, speaking vaguely about how they know you and you need to remember your past if you want to make sense of what's happening right now. Then the main character, Jacket, wakes up in his apartment, receives a message on his answering machine, and finds a package has been delivered containing a rooster mask and instructions on a job that need doing. This launches you into the first level. Afterwards, Jacket goes to a shop and is greeted by a bearded man who knows him and offers him free food. This format continues for a while, with a few more visits from the mysterious masked trio. As the game progresses, things slowly start to seem a little off for Jacket, and the story takes an interesting turn. The ending of the game, while not super dramatic, is very satisfying and does a great job of tying up most of the plot points, while leaving a few questions still unanswered for the player to ponder over. Overall, I'd say the story, while secondary to the gameplay, complements it greatly and genuinely made me wonder what would happen next. For me, the absolute standout element of Hotline Miami is the soundtrack. It really helps set the tone of the game, and without it, the levels would feel strange. One of the best things that the music does is provide a sense of tonal whiplash. You start each level with this chill lo-fi music, and then as soon as you head to your car and start the level, a super up-tempo piece of music starts, which accompanies you throughout the entire level. This, in combination with the visual style, makes all of the killing seem much more like a game rather than the brutality that it actually is. And then after you finally kill everyone, the music very abruptly changes to this ominous droning sound, which snaps you back to the reality of what you've just done as you make your way back to your car past all of the bodies and pools of blood. Then, in the mission complete screen, you get this chill synthwave accompanying the awarding of points based on how well you murdered everyone. This tonal dissonance really plays into the story and what's going on in Jacket's head, and in my opinion, the music and sound design are the main standouts of the game. Where Hotline Miami really falls short is when it comes to replayability. It's a pretty short game, with the main story only taking me about 5 hours to complete, and in my opinion, the levels themselves don't have a lot of replay value. Considering how long it took me to complete each level, I'd pretty much totally memorized the layout of the rooms and the routines of the enemies by the time I completed them, thus making completing them again much easier. Of course, there's always the challenge of trying to beat your previous high score, or if you enjoy pain, getting the Get a Life achievement, as well as unlocking all of the different masks and weapons in the game. So there's definitely some replayability, but in my opinion, not enough to make me want to play the game again. To sum up the non-spoiler section, Hotline Miami is a really fun game, provided that you like the pixel art style and don't mind dying over and over and over again. The gameplay is fast-paced and action-packed, and the story is pretty decent with a nice, satisfying ending. I'd definitely recommend it to people who enjoy short, single-player games. However, I'd wait until it's on sale, as, in my opinion, its regular price after over a decade doesn't really justify its length and replayability. Now with that out of the way, it's time to get into a few spoilers, so if you don't want the game spoiled for you, go away, play it, and then come back. Are you gone? Okay, sweet. One thing that I only brushed upon before was the boss fights, of which there are two. The first one is with a character known as Biker, and this occurs about halfway through the game. It's a fun change in the game's formula and provides a few unique challenges. Once you understand his attack pattern, he's not particularly difficult to kill, but it is still a pretty fun challenge. The other main boss fight is at the very end of the game, and this one also provides you with a unique set of challenges, but I think I'll leave that one up to you to experience for yourself. There are also a couple of what could be considered mini-bosses on a few levels, which do help to keep things interesting. Before, I said that the story in Hotline Miami is quite vague, and while I do believe that to be true, I also think that it was a very deliberate choice by the developers to leave the story open-ended. That way, players are left to fill in the blanks however they choose. In the main part of the game, Jacket's backstory is never really explained. You get little snippets here and there, but the game definitely doesn't spoon-feed you. The way that the story is paced plays similarly to the way that individual levels are paced, just on a grander scale. The game gives you just enough time to get comfortable with Jacket's current situation and then abruptly changes things up. This works well because you're progressively given little hints at varying levels of subtlety that something is a bit off, and then it comes at you hard. For example, the first hint that you get that something isn't quite right is that each time you go to a different shop, it's the same person serving you who says very similar things. After the first few missions, the environment starts to deteriorate, and Jacket starts seeing pools of blood in the places he visits, as well as corpses lying on the street and talking to him in restaurants. Occasionally, the screen gets filled with static, and then Jacket stops seeing the bearded man and instead sees an unfamiliar face who greets him with hostility. The story more or less reaches its climax when Jacket comes home after a job and finds his girlfriend dead and a masked person on his sofa who shoots him. He then wakes up in a hospital bed, and it's revealed that he's been in a coma for the entire game so far and has been replaying the events of the past couple of months in his head. This is a great point in the game to introduce this plot point, as by now, the player will have got comfortable with the gameplay loop, but probably have noticed things starting to deteriorate. Now we enter the final act of the story. Jacket escapes the hospital and tracks down his girlfriend's killer at the police station, where he also finds a file on his own killings. Finally, he tracks down the leaders of the Russian mafia and kills them. He then walks out onto the balcony, throws down his mask, lights a cigarette, tosses a photograph off the balcony, and the credits roll. It's honestly a really satisfying ending to the game. So that's Hotline Miami, all done. It was a pretty fun experience, and... Huh? Another chapter? Oh, does that mean we're not done? Oh, we're winding back a couple of months. Okay, cool. Maybe we'll get some answers. That's right, there's a whole nother part after the credits, this time from Biker's perspective. It fills in a few of the blanks of Jacket's backstory, although I'm going to leave that up to you to play for yourself. Overall, I was really impressed with what Hotline Miami managed to pull off. Superficially, I didn't think it would carry much weight in the gameplay or the story due to the overall style of the game. I was very pleasantly surprised to find that not only is the gameplay very well fleshed out, but it also manages to house a great story in its overall quite short runtime, and it's a visual and audible treat. I definitely recommend anyone who enjoys this style of game to check it out, and if you don't, it might be a nice new experience for you. I'd suggest waiting for a sale, as like I said before, it is a rather short game with, in my opinion, not a huge amount of replay value, although it's not super expensive on Steam, so if you can afford it, I don't see why not. If you do end up playing it, or if you already have played it, please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you've stuck around this far, thank you so much for watching. It would really mean a lot to me if you could give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. If you have any games you'd like to see me play and review in the future, please let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you next week.